So I just got off a call with a few Compass agents and some similar markets as ours. And it's interesting to see that we're all definitely experiencing two different things happening in our market. Some things are still moving and others are sitting, which is causing a lot of confusion for consumers and agents.
Totally. I mean, in Santa Barbara, I think we've always had two different markets. We have the luxury market and then we have the regular market, and even last month, our highest sale was about $47 million on Padaro. Wild. And it was on the MLS for one day, which basically means that was an off-market sale. And then you look at our lowest price, and it was $826,000 for a one-bedroom, one-bathroom major fixer on Figueroa Street.
And to top it off, just to say something here about that $47 million, we know that sold cash, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting, right? Despite rising prices in both the luxury and regular housing market, and even with interest rates now topping almost 8%, if you are looking at these owner-occ rates, or the other day we quoted an investor rate, 8.65. Our real estate market seems to still be chugging along, definitely slower, but still moving forward. That being said, I don't think anyone could argue that there are a lot of price drops these days.
Yeah, I mean, your wife even mentioned it, there's a lot of price drops happening in those email inboxes from Zillow and Redfin. And, we are getting an increase of inventory. This last month's inventory increased to 2.49 and previously it was 2.2. So not to say that that's anywhere close to that, 6 months normal market,
right,
but it proves that we are seeing an increase in inventory and we have more things on the market than we have in the last 3-4 years, 5 years
pre-COVID,
maybe?
right? Pre-COVID, inventory, I think when 2019 was at like 3.5 months. Right. So it wasn't quite at that 6 months like you said, but it was definitely closer to what we're seeing us bounce back to now. Right. And keep in mind here, my wife is also, I think, one of the biggest advocates for us doing this type of content, because she asked me the toughest questions, which actually then I come back and go, we should really make a video about this, because that's a consumer asking me a real question as a realtor, and it's like, man, that's a great question. Like, I need to talk about that. So anyways,
totally.
We're really witnessing this second divide, I feel, in the market, right? I feel like, some homes are still flying. We were just talking about that earlier today. We had that house on Lighthouse, went pending, 3.7, closed in 4 days? Probably all cash. I haven't even verified that, but most likely cash. And those homes were selling for 1.8 pre-COVID. So we're seeing this two different markets, right? Something like that still moving relatively fast, but yet other listings could be sitting on the market 4 months.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the biggest thing we're seeing is the divide between seller motivation and buyer expectation, right? I mean, some sellers are still thinking you can just price it based on the comp in the neighborhood from last year. Right. Or, I have a good enough house. I don't need staging. I don't need to paint that wall or do a slight repair. But those are the things that are really making a difference in today's market.
For sure. And I think buyers are definitely a little bit more discerning these days. I followed up with a buyer that I had who was an excellent buyer, was buying his third property, 25% down, and he just simply said he's given up on the SB market, which is unfortunate, because I think a lot of buyers are experiencing that. But what I also made sure to tell him was that there was a particular property he was eyeing that we did make an offer on for $1.2 million, and they didn't take it, and it closed escrow at $970,000.
Wow.
And I sent it to him and just said, dude, talk about a seller, not being aligned with what was taking place in that particular market for that condo in that neighborhood. But he also missed out by not making an offer at $1 million. Right. So when it finally came back and I told him, let's make an offer at $1 million, he just was burnt out and said, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that's a really perfect example of the opportunity. I had those buyers down in Ventura, and we had been looking. They made it very clear they weren't really willing to get into negotiation, and they didn't even really want to ask over or even, put in an offer at asking. So what did we do? We looked at properties that were on the market for a while, that you might have a seller that's kind of sweating. They obviously listed it. It's sitting there a lot longer. It's taken a few price drops. We went in, we offered under what they were asking, and we got our offer accepted, and we still had some room for negotiation. And I think, even in this really weird dual market, there's still opportunities for people. It's just really looking at the strategy, understanding what your goals are, and then allowing us to do our thing.
Right. So still like having conversations with sellers these days, it's pricing and presentation are still at the most important.
And together. It's not one without the other.
Right.
You can have a beautifully remodeled home, but if you're off on the price, you're just going to be chasing the market down. And I think we looked at some statistics yesterday, and of all the price drops that are happening, price drops that were 11 to 12% of that original listing price were the ones that were then going pending and selling.
Closed.
So
right.
If you're taking a price drop, but it's under 11%, you're not really putting yourself in the position to get those buyers to come and look at your property.
And what we were analyzing was the properties that went pending, the properties that took price drops in the entire month of September.
Yeah.
And what we saw was that, like you said, the closed and pending properties had already experienced a price drop upwards to 11 to 12%, while the active properties that were still sitting on the market that did take a price drop were only on average at about a 7% price drop. So that pretty much tells us they still have a ways to go to meet that, maybe let's call it the new price of what the discerning buyer is looking for. So that is what we mean when we're saying there are two markets unfolding here, seller expectations and buyer expectations. And I think it's safe to say that buyers are definitely more discerning and a little more conservative right now in the market.
But on that note, again, going back to the data we looked at yesterday, 56% of the homes that sold under $2 million sold at or above asking.
That was interesting.
So that's the market. That's the confusing one, right? That's the market that's still going. Our average days on market for single family homes is 30 days and 24 for condos. Yep. That's still a really quick moving market. But again, one, it's under $2 million, which is considered the affordable range here in Santa Barbara.
Probably under 2.5 would really be considered affordable.
Exactly. Here. So there's always going to be competition in that range. And then in that range, 56% of those had a good price and presented well. And we're still able to see that really competitive seller's market happening.
Yeah. And I don't remember exactly, but I think the highest sold I saw on there was 112% of the original list price. So it went 12% over the asking price, which is confusing. So that's what I told my wife, kind of drawing this all back to why we're making this video. Is like, she asked me, well, why am I still hearing that the market's hot? And I think it really just depends on that price range and what it is that you have to offer, because, something under 2 million, you'll most likely see competition. Like we said, 56, that's 1 in 2 offers are going to have multiple offers. If the pricing is right, if the presentation of the home, they both align together.
Right.
So definitely confusing out there for some of the buyers. So I understand, where the confusion comes in.
Totally. I think really the advice in this situation is if you're a seller, you need to get really clear on your price and your presentation. And if you're a buyer, let's look at the homes that are sitting a little bit. Let's try to engage with those sellers that might be sweating and try to really come to something. And don't be ashamed or embarrassed or feel like it's a waste of time to put in an offer that's under asking. Like, let us do our job. Let us do the negotiations. Let's bridge the gap between the sellers and the buyers, and let's get you into your home.
I think that's a solid point. And that's coming back to that call that I was on with the two Compass agents. Both were in the Bay Area markets. And one was talking about a specific listing they had at 6 million, and another one was talking about another listing at like 4 million. And both said the same thing. Just bring us an offer. Like, the houses are just sitting. Bring us an offer. And I think that's kind of where we're at, is that buyer confidence, or maybe their buyer agent confidence, isn't there to just convince the client to write an offer, because we always have that back and forth of like, what's a good offer? What's going to be laughed at? What's going to be something that we're just embarrassed to present? And I'm not saying go in there and just try to lowball something by a few $1 million.
Don't offend people.
Be realistic, right? Of what you think this property could sell for in today's market, or 6 months from now, where the market, you think the market will be, and try to begin those communications of negotiation. Right. So I think agents need to get on board with that and start having a better conversation with
your
their
job.
buyers. Yeah.
Do your job. It's a little bit harder than it has been, but honestly, that's why we're here. We're here to make it work for people and see if there's a middle ground to even meet between that seller and buyer, and then get it done. You know, I think our advice to sellers actually is really fit by that saying that you use. What is it?
Which is pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And what that means is, you know, sellers are sitting on the most appreciation they've ever experienced in 2 years. Yeah. And some of these sellers are holding on to prices that maybe just aren't there anymore, but they're still selling at a record appreciating value, you know, ever. I mean, we've experienced the quickest, you know, rise in prices we've ever seen.
Right.
So they're still making a lot of money.
Totally. So if you're looking to cash out on all that equity that you have made, reach out. Let's get a game plan together.
Yeah, because now more than ever, your agent, marketing, and strategy matter. I'm Abel Ramos with Compass.
I'm Jackie Potter.
See you next time.